Okay,
are you ready for us to start? Thank you.
Ready.
Thank you. Right. Good evening, councillors, and welcome to this meeting of the Planning Committee, and also welcome to, I think we have 3 speakers tonight, and we will, when we get to the item for the applications to be considered, we will take the applications where there are speakers first, if that's agreeable to all councillors. Right, and just to remind everybody that this meeting is recorded. Turning to the agenda, first of all, I don't think we have any apologies, we're all here, aren't we?
That's correct.
Yes, thank you. Do I have any declarations of interest, councillors? No.
No.
Thank you. Right, item 3, minutes of the meeting held on the 15th of September. Are you all content that these minutes can be signed as a true record? Yes, you can. Okay. Thank you. Unanimous. Item 4, public questions in accordance with standing orders 22 and 23. Do we have any questions?
None received, Chair.
No, thank you. Letters of objections. Well, we have quite a few letters of objection in respect of 5/2020/1928 Southdown Industrial Estate, which will be sort of taken into account when we take that item.
There were also letters of objection regarding 34B Shepherd's Way.
Yes, I think that councillors have, I hope, all seen those. Okay, well, in that case, we'll move to the main part of the evening, which is item 6, applications registered the week ending the 11th of September 2020, applications registered week ending 18/09/2020, and applications registered week ending 25/09/2020. And if we could turn to page, find a page number.
Are we doing Southdown first?
Yes, we're doing Southdown first.
Okay, that's on page 18.
I was going to say it's page 18, isn't it? Yes. So, councillors, if we could take first, please, item 5, 2020-1928, which is the demolition of existing buildings and construction of 8 new units for use within B1 and new Class C, B2 and B8 at the Southdown Industrial Estate. Right, we have one speaker tonight on this, so if I could ask.
So would you like me, Rosemary, to display the slides first of all, or would you like to hear from the resident before?
It's probably easiest. What, councillors, would you prefer to look at the slides first? Yes, we'll look at the slides first.
Okay. Right, so bear with me just a second. I just needed to ensure I had it up in place.
Okay, so this first slide is showing the existing site of Southdown Industrial Estate, where you can see the existing units and the houses behind, which is Meadow Walk. And you can see where the proposed units on the next slide have, if you can show that. You can see where the unit 1 on the left-hand side of the screen is going to be is proposed to be sited. The proposal is for 8 units, numbered obviously from 1 to 8. The right-hand side of the screen is a part of the conservation area, and the left-hand part of the screen is the largest unit, which is, I think, the most controversial part of the application, which is the part which backs onto Meadow Walk. There is proposed more screening regarding trees, etc., but I think there is proposed to be a vehicle yard there with possibly HGV vehicles. We can go on to the next slide, Hev. Right, this is showing the proposed street scene. Now the front of the site is going to be taken away and the units are going to be sited towards the back of the site. They are going to be higher and larger than the existing units, and they are going to incorporate office blocks as well. And go on to the next slide. So this is showing where the proposed unit number 1 is going to be sited, and you can see where there's a ground fall from the Meadow Walk and the residential properties there. There is a ground fall site of approximately 2 metres, but whether this will actually affect the residential properties, because the units are going to be slightly larger. Can we go on to the next one, Hev? And this again is showing proposed elevations of the unit 1, which is going to be approximately 11.7 metres in height overall. And go on to the next slide. These are showing the units from 2 to 7, which are going to be slightly smaller, and these are going to be set towards the rear of the site. Let me go on to the next one. And this is showing again 4 to 7, the proposed elevations. Around the site, there's going to be trees which are going to be part of the landscaping site, and there's going to be amenity areas for the employment, which is going to incorporate sort of like exercise areas and benches, etc., etc. And then on the last one, this is unit 8, which is going to be, it's part of the conservation area, and this is going to be enclosed with trees just to sort of like offset it against the conservation area. I think this is the landscape layout, where you can see trees along the sight line of the residential properties in Meadow Walk. There are going to be incorporated further trees to hide the unit 1, and there is proposed to be a fencing which is supposed to be helping with the noise, and the whole of the site is going to be incorporated with a fencing black paladin fencing around the site. And the next one,
that's it. There's no more.
Oh, that's the last one, is it? Okay. And
Okay.
on this, sorry, and on this one there is there is shown to be some trees which are going to be removed but made up with other planting.
Okay, thank you.
I'll now invite the Joanne Richards, who is wanting to speak against this application.
Thank you. Okay, if you like to, as it were, far away, Joanne, and could I ask if you try and keep it to 3 minutes, please? Thank you. Heath, you need to unmute.
I have, yes, I have asked her to unmute.
Oh, still muted.
We go, thank you.
There we go, yeah.
So, good evening. My name is Joanne Richards, and I represent local residents that are objecting to the plans for Southdown Industrial Estate. We are all keen to see the area regenerated to support local businesses and create employment, but this plan will not achieve that and will have a negative impact on Harpenden. The reasons we are objecting to the plans in their current form are noise and disturbance, visual amenity, employment and traffic. The businesses currently operating on the site have restricted hours of working within their planning approvals, so there is no detriment to the amenity of residents from noise and disturbance. Unit 1, with its open-air service yard, is by far the most intrusive element of this new proposal. Its height and location at the closest point on the site to houses would cause noise, disturbance and pollution 24 hours a day to the nearby residents. It would generate noise events exceeding World Health Organization guidelines at night, seriously impacting sleep and affecting the amenity of residents during the day. The proposed acoustic barrier offers no guarantees or even suggested noise reduction figures to protect the residents from round-the-clock disturbances of air brakes, reversing bleeps and forklift truck activity, and at over 4 metres tall would also impact the visual amenity of residents. The proposed development includes vast amounts of B8 storage and distribution units. Storage and distribution generates HGV traffic, which is undesirable on local roads. Southdown is a residential area with shops and schools served by no primary or secondary distributor roads. These types of units should be out of town. They should be near motorways and not in a residential area. The Harpenden local plan encourages walking and cycling and improving air quality. These would all be negatively impacted by the current plan. B8 storage and distribution units use large areas of land, but actually employ very few people. Harpenden should be looking at a development that improves the local economy. We have a fantastic opportunity to do that with this space by creating a modern office park and encouraging small and medium enterprises, including startups, to Harpenden. We can create shared spaces to support the growing number of home workers who could then walk and cycle to an office, and in doing so bring trade to the local shops. A modern B1 development would bring employment, attract talent to the area, provide skills development to local people, and create exciting new business opportunities. We can do so much better for Harpenden and protect the amenity of nearby residents than this current proposal. And I really hope that you agree. And thank you for your time.
Okay, councillors. Right, could I invite comments from you, please, councillors, if you'd like to raise your hand, and then Heath can unmute yourselves. John.
Thank you, Rosalie. Yeah, I have read today the voluminous number of objections, and they come down to a standard theme, which I've got to say I think has considerable validity, which arises mainly around the transport and the noise. B8 activities, as the speaker said, would inevitably, in my mind, increase that amount of noise. I think the roads outside the access point there is highly unsuitable to this type of traffic, and we can actually see that further along Grove Road, where we have another builders type facility which often causes problems on that particular stretch of road. But also probably one of the biggest problems is the fact that the noisiest part of this proposed development is the one that's going to be nearest to the residential area. And the service yard at the back, I must admit, without measuring it or seeing it, I'm not sure how easy it would be without considerable manoeuvring around to operate as such. And quite clearly the proposers of the application recognise that there will be noise because they've offered to put up the fence, but I don't see that a fence really will dampen the noise. So I have to say I have a lot of sympathy with the objections that have been made.
Thank you, John. Other speakers? Nigel. You need to unmute. Nigel, you need to unmute yourself. We can't hear you.
Right, let me see if I can ask him to unmute.
That's it.
There we go.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, I can hear you.
Yeah, no, I tend to agree. I mean, I think, first of all, 24-hour working is asking a bit much, and I would certainly object to the 24-hour working. It's totally stupid. I think that, bar the very large units, I think the problem is the planners would have great difficulty not approving the other smaller units. So I would merely be objecting to it on the 24-hour working and the very large unit, which I think is impractical for location in the middle of a town centre. The other smaller units I'm more happy with on the basis I think they would probably end up being used for a mixture of uses in any event. So certainly I would reject it as it stands because of, as I mentioned, 24-hour working and the big large unit just not being the right unit for Harpenden.
Thank you. Paul de Court.
Yeah, all of those things I agree. I think we just need to be careful in what I'm considering is likely to be a heading towards refusal before the vote is taken. That there are issues about Unit 1 noise and hours of operation which are entirely valid, and we must object on those grounds. They might come back and mitigate those, but the thing they cannot mitigate against is the HGV movements in and out. It is absolutely correct, as was put forward by the Speaker and Councillor Drake, that this is just not a suitable site for vehicles of that size to go in and out, and there's nothing they can do about it. They haven't planned any different access points because they can't. There doesn't seem to be any reason, taking Councillor Turnbull's point, that if whereas Unit 1 was converted into something more acceptable, that there wouldn't be a significant loss of income and value for the developer, as well as the employment issues. So that's the area that I think we must make sure, if we are going to refuse, and making that assumption, that we make clear that the problem with the HGV vehicles is really, really large, if you'll pardon the pun.
Councillor Cousin, did you wish to speak?
Thank you, Chair. We don't, well, in my time of being on this committee, we don't really come across very many commercial applications. I think this is the first one that I've looked at like this. So I'm just wanting to check whether how we object, basically, I suppose. So has the developer applied for effectively all uses across every different unit, or is it on specific units? So, because what I suppose I'm leading to is, at the moment, there must have been lorries going up there, because there's the Harpenden Small Removal Company, for example, which has got not just small vans now, and I guess some of the other things. So there would have been HGVs going up there, and I don't want them. I'm agreeing with everything everyone has said, but I'm just trying to make sure that our objections are valid, because, you know, if we say that HGVs can't go up there, they may have already got some sort of permissions which allows HGVs to go up there, for example. So I'm just trying to work out how we best object.
I was going to say, I think that on that, yes, there is an element of HGVs go up there. They are going up there to deliver to the different units there. That's a very different matter from having a business where you're going to have HGVs making umpteen journeys a day, 24 hours a day. That's a very different matter. Councillor Liver, yes, Pip?
I just wanted to raise the point about lighting, because units like this are going to have a lot of lighting, and that can have just as much of a detrimental impact on the housing as any noise. But that isn't an issue that's raised. I was just wondering whether that would, because if it is all round the clock working, they will have lights on all through the time. Just making a point.
Yes, it is in the documents. It is sort of covered, saying that they will be cited to mitigate it. But I think you're absolutely right. There's going to be an issue with 24-hour traffic and 24-hour lighting, as it were. Councillor Cowley.
Just a sort of slightly technical question on the use classes. Because I know, I mean, it talks about here about its new use class E. I'm assuming this was put in before the statutory instrument that changed the use class ruling. Does that have any impact on if this was to go through with without the unit that requires the service yard? Yeah. Sorry, it's the word I'm looking for. Whether they'd be able to change uses using the powers of the statutory implement later on if they've got any of these other uses on the site.
You can't work it that way. We can only take a decision on what's in the application here. Councillor de Court.
Yeah, I just want to come back briefly on Councillor Cousins' comment about HGV use already occurring. It's on a much smaller scale, both in terms of the volume of movements
Yes, exactly.
and the type of vehicles. And it is also over at Unit 4, not Unit 1. But for me, as I said, the bigger problem is simply the number of movements. We have actually looked at fairly recently the commercial development where the small removal company are moving to. It's the one on Cold Harbour Lane that's being developed. And what I would say about that is, although it's not ideal in Cold Harbour Lane to have those vehicles of that size, and there is mitigation, which we talked about, it's much better than where they are now. And given the fact that the pension fund is deciding to upgrade its portfolio and its assets there, then we should be able to, as a town, to take the opportunity and say, we've got a situation where heavy vehicles, the biggest vehicles, are moving out, and we shouldn't necessarily think, therefore, they should be replaced. I know that's not what Councillor Cousins was saying, and we have to get exactly the language right, so we don't get tripped up on what we're allowed or not to do. But I do think we should be allowed to move forward, as developers are moving forward, to upgrade the site and modernise their site, as they said. We have an opportunity here to take some important heavy vehicle traffic away from what has become increasingly congested town, just as Hartland has actually been successful, and that's so much in it. So we mustn't let that, I think, get in our way. I'm not suggesting that was what was being said, but I would just to reinforce the point that we should this is a good opportunity for the whole town to get those vehicles moved away as they are and replaced with units that are more appropriate, which 7 of the 8 are.
Yes, although in planning terms, we probably can't go down that route, but I think what we can do is object to it. Now, does anybody else want to speak or make any other points?
Chair, sorry if I may, it's
yes.
Paul Cousin. Well, just to thinking in terms of our wording, the fact that there are restrictions on the site in terms of the hours now, obviously nothing has changed. Nothing has changed. There's still all that residential area. So one, I would have thought, argument for not extending the hours is that nothing has changed. There's still all the houses around. It's still in the same location. So there seems to be no logic of allowing longer operational hours.
Well, no, but I mean, I don't think we don't need to put that in our reasons for refusal. Now, if we're minded to refuse, the reasons would be that a 24-hour operation is not acceptable in terms of residential amenity.
Yeah.
Okay. Councillors, does anybody else wish to speak? No. In that case, I think I'm hearing loud and clear from us that we are minded to refuse on several reasons. I think if Mim, if you want to sort of just make a note as I speak, and then we can just check what we want to say. I think the first reason is building 1 is too big in scale and size. It's too big and represents significant loss of amenity to the residents of Meadow Walk. Mm-hmm. I think secondly, 24-hour operation is unacceptable in terms of noise and disruption to the amenity, again, of neighbours. And I think thirdly, the refuse on the basis of the volume of HGVs, 24-hour operations and the 24-hour operation. And on that, as a side, I would suggest we can add the fact that the roads, the local roads, simply cannot cope with the volume and size of the vehicles proposed. They are small local roads, and it's not just a matter of causing disruption in Southdown. They are going to cause disruption that's potentially going to go right through most of Harpenden, considering where they're coming from. Don't necessarily need to put that in, but that's the reality. I think you could say cause traffic disruption over not just locally, but over a wider area of the town. And I think we could say also refuse on the basis of potential light pollution, again, from a 24-hour operation. Councillors, anybody else want to add anything in, or was that fairly comprehensive? I think it's fairly comprehensive, isn't it? Okay, so could then we just move to the vote that on those bases we will refuse? Thank you. That's unanimous. Thank you very much. Right. You okay, Mim, if you got all that?
Yep, I have.
Great. We will now move on then, if we may, to page 24. Application 5, 2020. I think it's 2026. I have to...
yes, that's correct.
I have this perennial problem with having to keep changing my glasses to read the agenda and look at that, which is for the construction of 2 4-bedroom detached dwellings and 2 4-bedroom semi-detached dwellings following demolition of the existing dwelling, associated landscaping works and parking at Tanglewood, 34B Shepherd's Way. Before we go through that, could I just mention to Joanne Richards, she doesn't need to stay in the meetings if she wishes to leave. I forgot to tell her. I forgot to say you can leave, you don't need to stay all evening.
But she can also remain if she wishes.
Would you remain if you so desire?
She's entirely welcome to. Okay, I do actually have some slides again. So, Mim, would you like me to share those again before the objectors speak?
Okay, and I will just go over the details of the application. Okay, so
so bear with me a second. I just need to just make sure that I have the correct ones up in front of me before I share with you. So bear with me a second. Just navigating from one presentation through to the next. So.
Okay, so this application is for the demolishment of a 1970s bungalow and to replace it with 4 dwellings. The plot is fairly large and at the end of a road which passes by semi-detached properties 34 and 34B Shepherd's Way along a tarmacked area which is marked in red on the application as belonging to the applicant. The street scene of Shepherd's Way shows 2-storey houses which are designed with materials of brick and tiled frontages. The suggested properties will be 3-storey and will comprise of plots 1 and 2, which are 2 semi-detached houses consisting of ground floor, first floor and loft. Plots 2 and 3 are detached houses consisting of lower ground floor and first floor. Parking provision states 10 parking spaces, which includes 1 visitor parking and an additional 2 garages for plots 3 and 4. The arboricultural report appears to show that there are a number of groups or part groups of trees and single trees that are proposed to be removed along the boundaries. Suggested replanting shows some trees and vegetation, but does not give any detail.
Okay, I'll go back to the beginning so that you can speak to the slides, Mim, if you need to.
Okay, right, so this is the site of the original bungalow. And you can see there's quite a lot of ground. This is the proposed site entrance where you can see the bungalow in the background and you can see where it actually goes alongside the properties that I spoke about. And this is the proposed site where you can see the 2 semi-detached properties and the 2 detached properties. And this is showing the existing and the proposed property and the entrance. So you can see that the proposed properties in the background, and obviously you can see the bungalow as it is.
Okay, so I will now invite David Glassbrook to speak against the application.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I'm David Glassbrook, and I'm speaking on behalf of all the residents of the Close, the Pleasance and Shepherd's Way. We object most strongly for the following 5 reasons. Firstly, The size and scale is unacceptable. We draw your attention to pages 24 and 25 of the public document pack of your agenda, which show pre-application comments that refer specifically to these issues. Secondly, damage to the trees and the natural environment. All the new houses would be crammed in tightly against the boundaries of adjoining properties. Now, this will result in major damage to the trees in adjoining gardens. And although the developers have submitted an arboricultural report, it is cursory and it neglects the actual scale of damage to tree roots and the consequent structural damage to several trees. It appears to contravene British Standard 5837, which specifies the extent of the root protection area for existing trees. The report actually states that one tree, designated NT2, to quote their comment, is on neighbouring property, therefore not closely inspected. Now, the Harpenden Neighbourhood Plan, ESD 13, refers further to this. The third reason is the close proximity to boundaries contravenes local planning policy. Now, for this, you have to see the St Albans Local Plan, Policy L1, on housing size, type, mix, and density. And that includes this comment that development proposals that fail to make efficient use of land for housing, having appropriate regard to local character and site-specific factors, will be refused permission. Our fourth reason is the adverse impact on traffic and parking. There is inadequate parking provision for the size of houses proposed. The access drive is very narrow, and if visitors and essential services have to attend, it will cause further traffic and parking congestion in the Shepherd's Way cul-de-sac and create great difficulties in manoeuvring. And finally, fifthly, we feel there has been inadequate consideration. The application does not state whether a pre-application site visit was made to assess the scheme from the viewpoint of all neighbouring properties. Now, each of the residents affected by this distressing proposal have made their objections in writing with a great deal more detail. I ask you now to advise the St Albans District Council that this application has to be rejected on these practical grounds and to serve our community in so doing. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Glassbrook. I'd like to now invite Scott Moore to speak on behalf of the applicant for the application.
Thank you very much for the opportunity to speak. I trust you can all hear me. I'm speaking on behalf of the applicants, Mr. and Mrs. Holmes. I suppose, first of all, I should address the comments raised by the speaker a moment ago. Regarding size and scale, I think you have to understand the size of this site. If we look at the Harpenden Neighbourhood Plan, they are requesting dwelling densities of 40 dwellings per hectare, as does the policy L1, which the gentleman quoted as well, which also says 40 dwellings per hectare. Our site actually receives a density of 23 dwellings per hectare, which is a lot less than what is desired. And the policy actually says that proposals that do not make full use of the site will be refused. Policy L1 is also an emerging plan, which unfortunately the local plan now will have to go back, and it's not a policy in force and carries very limited weight. On the second part, the trees, we have done a full ecology survey. Let's look at bats and newts, everything else, as well as the tree survey by a qualified arborist. I believe that I've sent an email to him today with the comments of the gentleman, and I'll ask for his reply, which will be posted onto the web pages at St Albans, and we will address that. But what I would say is that we are removing 3 trees and replacing them with 16 trees. And we did carry out, like I said, all the ecology reports regarding the hedging. Everything is being retained apart from 3 trees. We believe the density is correct. We don't think the neighbours up there would have liked us to put 6 or 7 houses to get that sort of density of smaller 2-bedroom units. Regarding the parking, as you stated in the summary, there are 3 parking spaces per house on the site. The road in is a full-size road width necessary for a site of this size. It's also self-contained with a turning head. Therefore, on the plans, swept path analysis have been done to show refuse and emergency vehicles being able to turn around in the site. There will be no disruption to Shepherd's Way or the cul-de-sac. We could have used the entrance road in, if we wanted to, for 2 or 3 more parking spaces, but chose not to just leave it landscaped. Pre-application advice was sought, and we did have pre-application advice, and the recommendation, our original application was 4 detached houses, and the officer would like to see semi-detached houses, so we changed it to 2 semis and 2 detached houses. If you look on the site plan and look at the properties in Shepherd's Way and the close, you will see that our site still has gardens that are larger than those in the nearby area. Now we are stuck really because we have an emerging plan and the Harpenden neighbourhood plan, which is very specific in what it wants. It's very specific at where it tells us the development would be. And I think the Harpenden neighbourhood plan, I think if I could quote it very briefly, it said the priority of new development in Harpenden neighbourhood plan is the built up area of Harpenden. It also says it has to be in broad locations, which this is. And it also asks for 40 dwellings per hectare. We are nearly half that. Now we are only following the policy that Harpenden brought forward. And we are also following the policy of the emerging plan. If the green belt is to be protected, and I was an application last week, when all of St Albans is within the green belt, if it's going to be rejected in the green belt, then we have to look in the towns, and we are following all the policies that are relevant to this scheme. They are 2-storey houses with accommodation in the roof. The ridge height of our semi-detached houses are no higher than the ridge height of the gentleman just spoke. What I will say, I understand I've been in the building game for 40 years. I do sympathise with anyone who has to put up with building work nearby. But there is a pursuit of housing. It can't be in the green belt. And this site is a self-contained site, which is actually got a low density in comparison to what is required by policy. Thank you very much for letting me speak this evening.
Councillors, can I invite comments, please? Don't all shout at me. Pip, I think you were first with your hand up.
I was just noting that it's going to be the case of demolishing a bungalow, and under the Harpenden neighbourhood plan, it does ask to provide a mix of housing that meets current gaps in the housing market, specifically 1 to 2 bedroom flats and bungalows and 2 to 3 bedroom family homes. And which isn't covered by this planning application. So it's a pity to lose a bungalow, which would enable people to downsize. That's just my point.
Councillor Cousin.
Thank you, Chair. I just wondered, now that we've just heard the speakers, whether we could just have a look back at the slides again with the plan.
Of course, bear with me a second, I'll just get those on the screen. Okay, so I'll just go back to the beginning. Okay. Was there a particular slide, Councillor Cousin, that you would like to see?
I think when you initially spoke, you talked about the site in red, you know, from that original photograph, but it's not, you know, I don't know, it's not, I'm just trying to work out exactly where the site is. I mean, the boundary, I can see the house that's coming down. I don't think there was another one which has got,
Mim, I don't know if you want to sort of speak to this particular slide here, which is probably quite clear, which shows the boundary where we've
Yeah, I'm
got
just
the
trying
trees.
to work out where does this sort of public road end and the development site begin?
Right, okay. Can you see my arrow at all?
No, so
Screen
Mim,
can't.
no, because
Yes.
I'm sharing the screen.
Oh,
so
right, okay.
you direct me.
So, right,
So essentially we've got these. I think here are the semi-detached properties sort of on the right hand side as you drive up the access road.
Right, so the site boundary, where you've got your arrow here, you need to come down a little bit more to the left, and where that, a little bit further down to the right about there, that's where I believe the boundary starts, just a little bit up, but round about that area, that's where the site boundary starts, I believe, from what I could see. Looking on my...
So the access road in is part of the actual site of the development. It's
yes.
So these dwellings here to the right hand side do not actually. So this is not actually public highway land. I assume that they have a right to be able to gain access to their properties over this land.
Yeah. So if I can show this plan. Onto, can you see that?
If you come out,
can you raise it up a little bit?
That's
up a little bit, thank you.
Can you see it where the red lines showing the actual site?
You need to just come out a little bit, Mim. It's a little bit too close. That's it. A little bit again, and slightly higher up in front. That's it. A little higher. There we go. So I think actually, as you were saying, as you were describing, the access road does commence almost onto the line of Shepherd's Way itself.
Yeah, that's right. Okay.
Thank you.
And sorry, Chair, if I may, just one final question. The semi-detached house, the external wall, the left-hand side, does that have any windows? Because it looks fairly close to the house. You know, it'll be if there are windows in the side of the house, it's going to be looking straight into the back of a house that is already there.
Second, so
does that make sense?
Yeah, I'm just trying to find it.
Semi-detached house, as you look at it on the left-hand side, that external left-hand wall, does that have windows?
Right, let me just see which plot it is. Plot 3, I think it is. Hang on a second, let me just see the plot. 1 and 2. And 4. Trying to find the floor plans. 1, 2. Not sure that I've actually got the floor plans. I don't know if Scott can, Mr. Moore can answer that one.
Would you like me to ask Mr. Moore to answer that question?
Yes, please, because I haven't actually got the floor plan for that particular property.
Mr. Moore, are you able to answer that question for
Yes.
the committee, please?
I can. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you, Mr. Moore.
Okay. Yeah, there's one upstairs window on the side, which serves the bathroom, which is an obscure glazed window and can be non-opening. On the ground floor, there's a door and a downstairs window, which will be below the fence line. And the roof is hip to slope away from the neighbouring properties.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Moore, for clarifying that for us.
Thank you.
Thank you. Nigel, yes. Councillor Turnbull. Kev, can you unmute?
I can only ask people to unmute.
Okay. That's it. I'm now unmuted. Right, I've got, thanks, Chair. I've got 2 or 3 comments. I'm looking at my other screen, or I've got the plan of the site, and then when I look at the access going onto the public road, it looks awfully narrow. I don't believe that's two-way traffic there. I think at the entrance, it looks like it's almost single lane, which sort of bothers me. That's point one. Point two, there is the question of the height. Now, I know the gentleman said the height was the same as other buildings, but the total design of that building with 3 stories to me just looks, it doesn't look right, full stop. But the point of more valid interest, I think, is if you look again at the plan, while there may be little in the way of windows on flanks facing the other properties, if you actually look at the plan, particularly the detached houses, and I'm looking at the detached house on what it looks like on the north side, effectively that means people in the back gardens of the house in the adjoining street are going to be looking at a huge blank wall, and I don't think that sort of development should be allowed in backland. I agree backland development should be allowed, but not where the buildings are right up against someone's rear garden fence. I think that on that ground in particular, I would reject this.
Thank you, Councillor Turnbull. Do I have any other speakers, councillors? Yes, Councillor Court.
It's as Councillor Turnbull said. You showed us on the slides the entrance to the property, which is boundaried by the 2 semi-detached houses, and that looks, as I say, it looked to me as it appears that that's under control of other people. Whether if that can't be widened, I think that's a problem for 4 houses with more inhabitants per person than the bungalow, in terms of getting out, even accepting that the actual land, once you get in there, is of obviously less density than the sort of required maximum. It seems that it's kind of in the wrong place unless there's a different access for that number of houses. It's not so much the actual scale of them. And if the number of houses were reduced, then the problem that Councillor Turnbull mentions of other houses looking straight into a wall would be reduced, as they could be brought back, and the garden could surround the property rather than simply come in the middle with the edges being that. So that's Ona, and that was my observation about the access.
Thank you. Do I have any other speakers? Councillor Cowley.
Thank you, Chair. So I'm not entirely convinced by the argument about the access. Speaking largely, partly as someone who lives in a block of 14 flats where we have a single driveway, but I can see why councillors have raised those points. I think the bigger concern with this is the point about the overdevelopment of the site. I think those 2 detached houses in particular represent an overdevelopment of that particular portion of the site. I don't actually think there's anything wrong with the semi-detached houses across from it, but I do think that with 2 detached houses on the site, it represents an overdevelopment. I'd also want to make sure that in our in the wording that we submit to district, that we make sure that the point about the trees is flagged. I know that the speaker that raised the point that they are replacing 3 trees, I think it was 16, but I'd just like to make sure that it's noted, given the comment about the lack of detail in the tree replacement, because I think it is important that that we enforce the policies, and if they are replacing 3 with 16, then fantastic. But I just think it's important that we keep that comment.
Thank you. Do I have any other speakers? No. Then can I ask councillors? First of all, am I hearing that you minded to go for refusal rather than express concern? Okay, in that case, but in line with the reasons suggested by the officer for concern, are you happy with those? That it's with regards to the size, scale and massing on the site, and the overdevelopment of the site. And each site has to be looked at in context, and in context of its setting, as well as general rules. So are you happy to go with that? Okay, so
I just ask, are we recommending refusal? You're recommending refusal on size, scale and massing.
yes,
Yeah, overdevelopment of the site. Yeah,
yes,
and you want to keep in about the trees.
and yes, about the
Yep.
tree. I mean, I hear what they say, but we'll keep that in. Yes,
Okay.
the district. Okay, can I just ask all councillors if you could just vote, please? Thank you.
Okay.
Right, thank you very much. Thank you to our speakers. And again, you're welcome to stay, but I should not imagine it's necessarily how you're planning to spend your evening. Councillors, if we could now go back to the start of item 6. I'll just wait to see. Yes, are you planning to stay for the rest of the meeting?
Thank you for unmuting me. No, I was just recovering myself. That was all. I will be leaving, but many thanks. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Moore.
All right, thank you. Bye.
Okay, so shall we resume to the start of the agenda?
Yes, if we could. So if we could go back to page 11, 5/2020-1569, unless everybody feels differently, does not meet the criteria for consideration by the committee. Then moving on to 5/2020-1848. Mim, if you'd like to introduce that.
Yes, I believe we have some pictures on this one as well.
We
Heath,
do.
if
I'm
you
just
don't mind.
preparing back to the beginning from where I was before.
Okay.
Okay, there we go.
Right. This application has had planning permission previously granted for the main detail outlined in the description. The proposal is for changes to the front elevation, which consists of a timber frame porch, long glass window, which is to replace the rectangular casement on the first floor elevation. Changes the colour of the window casements, which will be from white to anthracite grey, and an alteration from the brick design on the front of the property to stone cladding. Further minimal alterations are the addition of a long ground floor window at the rear of the property. This dwelling is set in a road made up of brick-built properties of similar design. Inclusion of a property made up of stone cladding may upset the rhythm, though, of the street scene and appearance of the area. So I was a bit concerned because, as you can see from this particular picture, at the base of the property, you can see that they want to put stone cladding rather than brick. And as the street scene consists of mainly brick and the white render, I was a little bit concerned. So that's why I expressed concern. Since actually, no, that's all right, that's fine, that was something else. No, that's fine. So that's basically the reason that I was a little bit concerned about it. It didn't quite fit in with the street scene.
Okay, thank you. Councillors, any comments? Is Councillor de Court?
I actually don't have a problem with the cladding, and I think the street is more varied than sort of portrayed. It's a street that's quite near where I live, and I went down it the other day just to sort of check for myself. It's certainly the case that there are a lot of buildings of a similar style, and they typically have brick towards the bottom and they have some kind of at the top, but there are 4 or 5 buildings on that street. It's admittedly a long street that are clad all the way to the floor. There isn't a real, what I would say, consistency in that. The building itself is consistent with other buildings, and I sort of feel that fits better. So for me, it's not an issue because I don't think there is a consistent look across the whole street in terms of the frontage and their composition.
Heath, could you put me back onto full screen because I can't see the councillors.
Okay. If I do stop sharing, there we go.
Yes, and has anybody else? Right, have I any other speakers? Yes, Councillor Cousin. Yep.
Sorry, thank you, Chair. Sorry, the whole thing disappeared from my screen for a second there. I think I just checked. This isn't in the conservation area. I think personally, if it was in the conservation area, I would have agreed with the officer comments because I think it is a bit of a shame. But I think as it isn't in the conservation area and it's a little bit more mixed, the whole road, I think I would find it hard to object to it.
Yes, I think I would. I know the road well. I mean, I frequently walk down it, and it is actually pretty mixed when you go, and it is a long road. If you go the whole way along it, it's pretty mixed. So anybody else? So are we happy to go with no objection?
Okay.
Thank you, Mim. 5/20/21/689 does not meet the criteria for consideration. Neither does 5/20/21/702. Then we'll move on to 5/20/21/844 39 Tufnells Way.
Okay,
Right.
I will share some images I have.
Thank you, Hev. Right, so this property shows a property which is a bungalow, and it's one of three, and it's set between houses in Tufnells Way in a staggered line, one from another, in a street scene which consists of a mixture of bungalows and houses. The proposal is for the demolition of the existing bungalow and construction of a five-bedroom property. It shows a dwelling with a roof height of approximately 7.8 metres. Neighbouring properties have roof heights of approximately 6.5 metres and 4.8. The proposed dwelling appears to have been moved forward slightly on its original footprint. The application is showing a 3-storey property which provides 4 on-site parking spaces. The application states that there are no trees or hedges on the site, and a bat survey has been carried out that determines that there is no evidence of bats. Due to the size and scale of the property, it would appear that there may be a detrimental impact on neighbouring properties in terms of loss of amenity. Now, I was checking the website today to see if there are any letters of objection. And it came to light that there have actually been some amended plans put in, and that was based on the fact that there had been a letter from Herts County Council Highways, and they had basically said that they basically said in their letter that it is recommended that the LPA seeks amended plans prior to the determination of this application, so that the LPA can reassure itself that parked vehicles would not extend onto highway land, i.e. any part of the grass verge and vehicle crossover which form highway land and would be likely to overhang the highway boundary. So therefore, I could only get it on A4 paper, but if I hold this up, you'll see where they've put in amended plans which show a line which shows highway land at the bottom of their
Right, so I'll just do stop share and then hopefully we'll be able to see. Yeah, okay, if you carry on speaking, Mim, if you carry on speaking, then it will ensure that yours is the...
Right, so if I put my hand there, that shows that there's a line across their boundary which shows highway land. So they have changed their parking arrangements.
Okay.
So that slightly throws it a little bit because I hadn't included parking in my comment. So just to make you aware.
So how many parking spaces will they have now?
Well, it looks like they have only, well, they've taken one off the parking
Yeah.
on the drive. So I'm presuming they've reduced it by one. So that's all I can tell, because that's the only change that I could see from the original plan. So did I include, Hev, did I
Yep.
include on the pictures any plan?
Sorry, I don't know that there was a plan. Just bear me a second. I'll just do share screen again. So that was the first one. Yeah, that's the first one.
Yeah.
And we've got the bird's eye view.
Right, so on this
yeah.
one, yeah, on this one you can see there's two vehicles there, and they've taken that bottom vehicle
This
off.
one here, they've
Yeah.
removed, have they?
That's
Okay.
been removed because of the line of the Herts County Council land.
And then we've got the other one is the actual elevations.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
So before they had 4 parking spaces, so I'm presuming that they've lost one, and it's a 5-bedroom property that they're putting on there now.
Yep, and it looks a bit tight for
Mm.
parking. Okay, thank you. Right, comments. Matt.
Yeah, sorry. Is 3 spaces enough for a 5-bedroom? I don't think it is it?
It should be 3 point something, shouldn't it have?
Yeah, it's sort of kind of they class it as 3 allocated spaces and 1 unallocated.
Mm.
But you know, the general rule is that we round it up.
And looking at the slightly odd shape of it because of the highway land, I don't think it's going to be particularly easy to park 3 cars there.
No.
You have to do a very sharp turn, aren't you? And then sort of back out.
Yeah.
Yes.
But I'm concerned about the impact at the rear of the property as well.
Well, I think it's very large, particularly the roof height, isn't it? It's going to be very overwhelming. John?
Yes, thank you. Yes, I was just going to make the comment. I still think that the roof height is clearly excessive because it goes from the house next door right down back to the bungalows, and therefore clearly look like an overdevelopment. And I think the argument that there are 3 spaces in there is 3 extremely tight spaces, not for any sizable vehicles at all. But most of all, I'd like to just reiterate the point made by Councillor Liver on the previous application, that this means the loss of yet another bungalow. Which I think is something we should take into account.
Yeah, Nigel.
Can someone unmute me?
You are unmuted, Nigel.
You are.
You are
okay,
unmuted.
Okay. Simple reason. I concur. 3 reasons. 1, the height. 2, the parking. 3, the way the building intrudes into the back garden, the rear extension, etc. I would have thought the neighbours would be able to object on the 40. I haven't checked the 45-degree angle rule, etc., but I'd have thought they've got a major problem as a developer trying to do that in the back garden.
Paul Cousin.
Thank you, Chair. Well, just to agree, I think the height. Well, yeah, I agree with all those 3 points. The height, obviously, it's where the bungalow meets a 2-story house, so it wouldn't be objectionable or look odd. I don't think if it was a similar height to the next door, because then you're just moving the boundary on one. But I think it looks odd because it's higher than both of them. So Tufnell's Way, there is a lot of development going on. It's quite a long road, and there is a lot of bigger houses upsizing. So it's not unusual in that respect, but I think it is unusual it's the barrier between the bungalows and the 2-story house. So I agree with everything the other councillors have said.
Yeah. Paul to court this time.
It's a very quick point, but I don't think, and I can see the way we're going, we shouldn't do anything that will allow that in practice cars to encroach on that path. It's great that the highways have pointed it out, but unlike quite a lot of other ones where there's some sort of wall or boundary, it's just will be a slope. And I just fear that, yes, it gets permission. I think it's overscaled, but they squeeze in the cars and they can't quite fit them in.
So they'll
Going
spill
over
over.
path, and Tufnell's Way is a long way from town.
Yes.
People can reasonably walk. It's a long road, as Councillor Cousins said. People should be
Very
able to
long
walk down and not have to be
Yes.
constantly calling the council or whatever to say there's a parking infringement. I'm just
Yes.
getting ahead of myself here, that practically I don't like the idea that we make it relatively easy when there isn't a curb or anything else for people to just say, oh, I'm just parking, I'm only a little bit over, and some with a pram faces
Yes.
that. So all of the things I think we're likely to have concerns about all add together. The scale makes it more difficult with the parking.
Yes.
And I agree with all the other comments made.
Thank you. Okay, so anybody else wish to speak? In that case, I'm sure we're all going with the recommended refusal. Could we add something into it about the parking? And I think we could say that, you know, have noted, if you like, sort of, I don't know if you want to say new plans been submitted, that there is, that part of the originally designated parking area is in fact public highway, and therefore say something about refuse that there would be inadequate parking, and so we need some sort of wording to say concern that the parking will nonetheless given that the parking area has been reduced, concern that in fact the parking will spread out onto what is public highway. Put something into that effect, so that if perhaps at least it'll make them have a look at seeing some sort of way of separating out. I don't know how you can, but I think we can at least express that concern.
Yeah. May I just sort of make the suggestion, just of the wording we've used in the past is highway conflict. I believe that, I believe that policy, you know, obviously this is, you know, means meeting, but policy 34 uses the terminology of highway conflict.
Oh, yes. Yeah. Okay, if we can put that in, because you're quite right, I can't see how that's not going to happen. Okay,
thank you.
Everyone agreed to refuse? Thank you.
Thank you.
Right, page 13. 520/20 1860 does not meet criteria for consideration. Similarly for 1867 and 1884. So we can now move on to 1892 31 Roundwood Park.
Right, now this property is quite an interesting one in the fact that as you can see, it's a property with a large frontage. It's got sufficient parking provision to accommodate the increase in bedroom accommodation. It needs updating, as you can see, and it's set well away from its neighbour. So in order to allow for this proposal, it shows an increase in the ridge height by 1.5 metres, and it's also facilitating a habitable loft accommodation. The first floor front gable extension is proposed, which is set away from the neighbouring property. A new front bay window will improve the appearance of the property. As the road comprises of a mix of variously designed dwellings, there'll be no compromise to the street scene. Now, the only thing is, if you can see on this picture, you can see where the red boundary line is. There is a dwelling that is at the back of the property, which you can't actually see on Google because it's not there yet, but it is. if you know what I mean. Can you go to the next picture, Hev?
I can indeed. There we go.
Right, so where you can see the yellow arrow, that's the property that we're talking about. And in the area behind it, in the back garden, is another property that's been built, and it's not this great big huge one. There's another one there. So where they're going to extend and put a loft conversion up, my concerns are that it might actually impact on this other property at the bottom of the garden. Okay, so those are my concerns regarding the loss of amenity.
Mim, is the property in the garden, is that number 31A?
Yes, I believe.
Because there is a letter of objection on the planning portal
Yes.
from 31A.
Yes, there is.
On the basis of overlooking.
That's right. That's what I picked up. There was a letter of objection. There's also a letter of support.
Yes, across the road.
Yeah.
If I can interject, Chair, 31A is the property adjoining the property, not the property at the bottom of the back garden.
Oh, so.
Yes, so yeah, you can see here just on the screen that I'm just sharing that it's
Oh
actually
yes,
30.
31A. So I don't know what number this is then. That's at the bottom of the garden. I don't know.
It'll be in Faulkner's Field. It'll have a Faulkner's Field address.
Oh right.
Yes.
Okay, let me just see. So you carry on discussing. I'm just going to see whether or not I can just find on the District Council GIS, sort of this location.
31A has written to object, saying that they will be overlooked.
Yes. Yes, because they were saying that they have got there's some windows at the side of this particular property in 31 Roundwood Park that are obscurely glazed, and that if they do any alterations, these aren't going to be any longer obscurely glazed, and so they're going to be overlooked into their conservatory, where they spend a lot of their time having meals and so on and so forth. So those were their concerns. My concerns were the dormer windows, which are going to be more overlooking into the house at the bottom of the garden as well.
Okay, so I don't know, are you able to see this GIS mapping on your screen?
Anything at the moment, Ev?
No? Okay. Right, let's try again. Okay, so this is the District Council GIS mapping software. So, so number 31 is obviously this one here. And so is it number 41, Mim, that the dwelling has changed and become something larger? Or there is actually...
It's in the actual garden of 31.
Okay. So
are we sure that it is a separate property?
Yes, there you go.
Rather than a granny flat or something.
No, it is. I don't think so. But there's another red area here.
Okay, let me just click and we'll be able to find the information. So,
again, if I can comment, I know the street. It's a separate property.
Yeah.
Okay, just bear with me a second. Oh, so annoying because you touch the top and it makes the thing makes the thing appear. Right, sorry, bear with me a second. So it must have been this application from 2018.
So Matt, you can put your hand down. I've noted you wanted to speak when we get to it.
So yeah, there is a different application that's obviously been submitted for.
But it's not even on Google Earth.
No. Okay, so I think, well, it looks like it's 2017. I have a feeling I remember this one, actually. Now that I've seen this, they kept on coming backwards and forwards with proposals, and then eventually something was approved, and I think it's like a dormer bungalow.
So
it's on the site. Yes.
So did that originally belong to 31 Roundwood?
Yes, it was. So it was built in the garden of number 31 Roundwood Park. So yeah, interestingly, this I mean, it's sort of slightly connected, I suppose. It was one on appeal. You can see here.
I remember that. Yes.
Yeah, so it's a 2-bedroom detached house. So it is actually it's a dormer bungalow. It's funny, I can sometimes these things come back to you and I can remember it.
Right.
Now, let me just see if I can just share it with you, just so that you have a bit of an idea as to what it's. So it's just taking a little moment to download, unfortunately. Okay, here we are. I'll share this screen with you. Okay, so this is this is the building that's in the garden. So in a sense, so this elevation here is what's on Falconer's Field. And then the side elevation that is probably from the garden of number 31 is this side here.
Right.
Okay.
Okay.
Did you want me to see if I can find a site location plan to give you an idea as to the close proximity of it?
That'd be good if you could.
That'd be useful, yeah. Okay. Right, here we go. Oh, this is perfect, actually. This gives a really good idea. Okay, there we go.
All right. Right, there you go then. So you can see right at the bottom of the screen, you can see 31 Roundwood, and then you can see the bungalow.
Okay, did you want me to stop sharing now?
Yeah, that's okay.
Okay, fine.
Okay.
Thank you, Hev.
Okay.
Matt, I know you had your hand up first, so far away.
Thank you, Rosemary. Yeah, I was just going to comment on the letter of objection from 31A. If I remember correctly, they were concerned both about overlooking and about light amenity into their playroom and hall.
Dining room, yes.
And I did think that was a fairly convincing argument that it would have a loss of amenity on them. And with the additional comments about the potential overlooking at the back, I think if I would be inclined towards the recommendation of express concern, but with a bit more in it about the impact on 31A as well.
Thank you. Paul Cousin, you had your hand up.
Thank you, Chair. I mean, I was just going to say that I was happy to go with the office recommendation. I mean, you know, it's not that uncommon to do rear, you know, loft conversion at the rear, and often it is under permitted development. I guess it's come to us because they're trying to raise the ridge height, which on that road I don't think is too much of a difficulty because there are a lot of different style and type of houses and a lot of bigger ones than this house. So I don't really mind so much about raising the ridge height, but I agree with the comments before about the potential loss of amenity. So I'd be happy with the officer recommendation.
Right, other Paul.
Yeah, and I'll be quick. Did we establish which property has written it in support of the application? I'm not sure that I heard that or missed it.
He was one across the other side of the road, wasn't it? Yes,
it was 32A.
Okay, yes. I was just confirming it wasn't the owners of the small house that was built on their back garden, because I could see potential there for mutual cooperation, but as it's not, that's fine. There's not a conflict of interest there. Thank you.
Okay, does anybody else speak? So are we minded to go with express concern, but add in also about the possible loss of amenity and privacy to number 31, 31A? Okay.
Okay, yep, unanimous.
Thank you.
Right. 5/2021/669 doesn't meet the criteria for consideration, so move on to 5/2021/710 at 9 Pennycroft.
Okay, this one I haven't got any pictures for. The proposal is for a two-storey extension on the front elevation where permission has recently been granted under another planning permission 5/2019-1297 for a single-storey extension. It's also proposed for the two-storey element at the rear of the property to be extended further along the rear and a loft conversion with the inclusion of some dormer windows. Planting of trees and a new hedge are proposed for the front of the property. With regards to the extending of the two-storey element at the rear of the property, this would be towards the middle of the property and it's suggested that it would have no adverse effect on the neighbouring dwellings. The proposed loft includes a dormer window. The proposals in this application meet the policies of the Harpenden Neighbourhood Plan, so I propose no objection.
Any comments, anyone, or are we all happy to go with no objection? Yep.
Okay.
Okay, yes, agreed.
Right, moving on to 5/2021/553, which is 46 South Down Road.
All right. This one is for a first floor side extension, which is to be positioned over the garage and is to house 2 en-suites with windows to the front and rear elevations. The proposed single-storey side elevation will be sited on the neighbouring side of the property and appears to have no detrimental impact. There'll be no change in the provision of bedrooms, which will therefore have no impact on parking. I suggested no objection subject to the appropriate design and use of materials on this locally listed building, which is sited in the Harpenden Conservation Area.
Okay. Can you pull up the plans, because it looked to me there is a letter of objection.
Yes,
And
there
on one
is.
side, I have to say I was concerned that it was so up to the boundary. I thought it was suggested it could be creating a terraced effect.
Yeah, okay. Are you able to pull those plans up for me, Hev?
Have you got them saved on the shared?
Yeah, they are. They're
okay, yeah, that's
under
fine.
our agenda.
So I can't remember which plan it would be, but I think it might have been the block plan. One of them, I thought it looked, and I think that was one of the reasons for objection as well, that it looked as if it was.
Is this 46 South Down Road?
Yes, it almost looked like it was becoming a semi-detached.
Okay.
In other words, there was a gap, and it had closed up the gap.
Yes, because the letter of rejection was from a neighbour, wasn't it? Number 45.
And I think the other thing to sort of think about is, I know the previous application is 5 years old now, but I'm not sure. I think just to think about whether we think this new application actually has addressed the previous reasons for refusal.
So which plan were you wanting to look at, the frontage of it, or?
There's one that shows it in relationship with the wall, with the red line in relationship to the adjacent building.
Right, okay, that would be the block plan. Just unhelpfully, there's an individual drawing for each and every single
there was
elevation.
There was one, I can't remember which one it was, but there was one drawing or one picture that came up that showed it very, very close.
So there's that one there, which is the block plan. Is that the drawing that you were meaning? I'm not sure that it is.
No, there was one that showed the extension was going right up to the boundary.
I think if you look at the street scene as well.
Yes, that one. Yes.
Yeah.
When it was.
What they've done is they've taken the single-storey extension. Next to number 45,
Are you seeing what I've got on my screen now, which is showing
Yes,
the site
but
location?
that was what I was concerned about.
So the single story is against number 45, and the 2-story they've put on the opposite side over the garage next to Crabtree Lane.
But that was the one I was concerned about because it looks like it's taken out. There was a gap between them. It looks like it's right up to the adjacent building, so close up that it almost becomes a attached to one another. There's hardly any space between.
Could we look at it on, Google Street View?
Yep.
Yeah. I think because they'd left, like, where they'd extended single story against sort of number 45, I think because they'd left that gap, that I didn't feel that there was so much of a problem with it. And because they'd extended 2-story on the other side, I didn't feel it was so much of an issue.
It was difficult to see if they've actually left a gap.
Yeah, there is when you look at the roof line, it looks like there is a gap. I mean, they pulled it in.
Okay, there we go. So I don't know if that helps. Are you seeing the street view? Yeah.
Yeah.
I think the chair has a good point.
Yes. I mean, it's sometimes difficult to tell off plans, but it looked to me like it was very, very close to making it appear to become become a semi-detached or terraced. It was so right.
If I can comment, Chair, just looking at the plans, etc., it's been looking at it on my other screen. My reaction is I agree. It's almost creating one big, massive block of building. And I don't like, I think it's a stage too far.
Yes. Yeah, because it's fundamentally altering the street scene, and it's effectively creating a terraced effect.
And excuse me, asking again, Heather, did you say there was a letter of objection from the neighbour next door or not?
Yes.
Oh, I don't know. So Mim, I don't know Mim.
Yes, there is. There was a letter of rejection.
Yeah, I'd agree. I'd agree.
And I think one of the objections, wasn't it, Mim? I haven't got it in front of me. Was the fact that they've closed up the gap between the buildings.
Yeah, I think they were concerned that because it had been refused before, that it was going to go through again.
And I mean, because I say the other point I think is, it was 5 years ago and they've come back, but I'm not sure I can see that they've materially altered the previous reasons for refusal. So, does anybody else want to comment? Could I ask, do we want to go for, do you want to express concern, or, and I would point out that also, perhaps, that whilst we're at it, that it's in the conservation area.
I think because
on that basis, I'm minded to refuse.
Yeah, I was going to say the same.
Agreed.
So could we refuse on the basis that it's, I don't know how to put it, an overdevelopment, the loss of boundary between the two properties will create a terraced effect out of keeping with its siting in the locally listed conservation area. And I think we could also say perhaps something along the lines of concern that the previous reasons for refusal have not been fully met. Okay, are we happy with that?
Yes, believe so, yeah.
Thank you. Happy, Nigel? Thank you. 5/20/20 1839 is not for, doesn't meet the criteria for consideration. 5/20/20 1952, which is 6 West Way. I noticed, it's very unusual to see it, there was actually a letter in from Thames Water bringing attention to the sewage route.
Yes, that was the only letter, wasn't it?
Yes. Which I think was more something that would be put in the conditions if it was granted.
Right, yes. So this particular property is currently a bungalow. From this picture, you can see to the left of it, there is a big property. But if you actually look on the street view, you'll find that when you look at it, there's a bungalow there next to it. Disregard the bungalow to the right of it, because that actually is a huge house now. Okay, so the property that we're looking at is, as I say, it's a bungalow, and it's sited in between a large detached dwelling, which is number 4 Westway, and a bungalow on its other side. The road consists of a mixture of large houses, bungalows, and moderately sized properties. The proposed property is set in from the boundaries, and its footprint goes no further than the building lines of its neighbours. The current property is a bungalow which appears to be dated and possibly in need of upgrading. Windows are sited on the front and rear elevations and will therefore have no detrimental impact. It's going to be replaced with a 5-bedroom detached dwelling with habitable loft space, associated car parking and landscaping works. Parking is provided for 3 vehicles. There do not appear to be any trees on the site, so therefore that won't be a problem. So from this plan here, you can see that number 4 is a large dwelling, number 6 is the proposed, number 8 is a bungalow again, number 10 I believe was a bungalow, and is now changed, and they seem to be changing all the bungalows along this road into sort of larger dwellings, and so I've put no objection, subject to no loss of amenity. There have been no letters of objection at all, and councillors.
Thank you. Nigel.
Yes, Chair. May I just pass a general comment? I'm looking at the street scene, the street elevations, etc. And this proposal is now going to be slightly bigger than anything else in the street by a little bit. And it's on that aspect, I think, while we probably can't refuse this application, if you look at the elevation, you see with houses now having flat roofs on the top rather than a ridge. And I think that's going to end up with dominant roof signs, or not dominant roofs compared with the rest of the house. And what particularly bothers me, there's a house being built at the moment in Townsend Lane, but if the planners now saw what the roof structure looks like in relation to all the other houses, they may well wonder how they let it get through. So I'm merely raising that as a point for future observation.
We can always express concern at the roof form.
Okay.
Express concern that the roof form will be overly dominant in the street scene.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, you're right. I can't see it being refused. Matt.
Just to preface this is not a road I know very well, so it's possible there isn't as significant a parking problem here as there are in other places. But I believe we established earlier that a 5-bedroom property should have 4 parking spaces. And from what's been written here, it appears that there are only 3 being provided. I just wondered if we should be pointing that out to district planners in our recommendation.
Yes, parking is extremely tight on Westway.
Yeah.
Possibly exacerbated by the school.
Well, yes, that's one of the reasons the parking's so tight on Westway, because Yes, there is a lot. It is heavily parked on.
And sorry if I can also interject, and when you see the way they're going to park the 3 parked cars on the forecourt, you can't do it. You've got to drive one of the cars out to get one of the other cars, in fact, both cars in. You've probably got to drive one of the cars out onto the street.
We see this all the time. People are very imaginative about how they think they're going to get the number of cars on a drive. So do we want to express concern as well about inadequate parking? Okay. Okay, so we'll go down the express concern route about potential dominant roof form, out of keeping with the street scene, and insufficient parking. Okay, are we okay to go with that? Thank you. 1936 does not meet criteria for consideration, and moving on to 5/20/21 7756 Coleswood.
Right. Now this one is for the construction of a 2-storey dwelling with loft accommodation. I have some pictures here.
Yeah, just bear with me a second. I'm just preparing them.
And this,
okay, carry on.
Right, so this is for a property that is sited in 6 Coleswood Road, but it's also the property that they want to erect is actually going to be sited in Kingscroft Road. So part of their property goes through to Kingscroft Road. They've got a garage there and outbuildings. So as you can see from this picture, their house is marked with the red little marker, and the yellow arrow shows where their garage comes through, sited next to 2 small terraced houses in Kingscroft Road. So if you want to go down one, for me. Right, so where this van is, this is where they want to put up a 2-bedroomed dwelling with 1 parking space next to number 3 Kingscroft Road, I think it is. And so, yes, so that's going to lead right the way back to the property behind, which is Coleswood Road. Okay, and this is the plan of the property. So it's going from the left, which is Kingscroft Road, right through to Coleswood Road, with amenity in green at the back there. The property is a 2-storey dwelling, which is proposed to be constructed next to a pair of semi-detached properties, as I said. The road of Kingscroft Road is a small cul-de-sac and consists of a variety of dwelling types, with some having vehicle parking and some having no parking facilities according to the property type. The proposal is to remove the garage and outbuilding belonging to 6 Coleswood Road and to replace with a 2-storey house with a loft area. The property will house 2 bedrooms and a study area in the loft and will provide parking for 1 vehicle. It will be built up to the boundary and will provide 28 square metres of amenity space at the rear. It will have the same ridge height as other properties in the area, and no trees will need to be removed. I said consider recommend refusal with regards to overdevelopment of the site in terms of size and scale, lack of sufficient amenity space, and the effect on the street scene regarding a terracing effect.
Thank you. Well, I think your comments are bang on. I don't know what other councillors think, but I think you're right on the money there. So, councillors, any other comments? Yeah, Nigel.
If you look at, thank you. If you look at the site plan, which I'm looking at Kingcroft Road. I
Mm.
see a car parked right up against the verge. Does that mean that car is actually on the pavement?
Quite possibly on the roads there.
I think some of them were.
I don't think you can park on those roads without being on the pavement. They
Yeah.
know them, but they are very, very
Yeah. Yeah.
streets with pretty, mostly sort of, I don't know, Victorian or Edwardian houses.
I'd refuse overdevelopment.
Yes, quite. Matt.
I think, yeah, no, I'd be inclined to agree. It's a massive overdevelopment. My question was around parking for 6 Coleswood if they lose the garage. I couldn't see on the site whether they have existing parking at the frontage of their property, but that road, from what every time I've been there, there's no way you can add any more cars to the on-road parking.
No.
And I'd be inclined to say that would be at least something we should flag to the planners as being a potential problem, because whether or not they use this garage at the moment, it's still parking that's provided for 6 Coleswood that would be lost.
Yeah. Okay, so does anybody else wants to comment? I think we'll agree with refusal, and we'll add and perhaps add on that on roads where a big parking problem, this development will exacerbate that with inadequate parking. Okay, so we all agreed to refuse. Thank you. Nigel, yes, thank you. 5/20/2019/44, 1 Oak View Close.
Oh, hang on, I missed one. Where are we? Oh,
Page
sorry.
17.
Sorry, I turned the
It's all
page
right.
quick. Right. Okay, so no pictures for this one. This one is, this application is proposing to extend the first floor rear extension throughout the width of the property and by a depth of approximately 1.7 metres in order to enlarge bedrooms and ensuite and to add a Juliet balcony. There will be no additional bedrooms. Due to the positioning of number 2 Oakview on its plot, there'll be no impact from the changes. The single-storey rear extension is being updated and roof lights are an additional feature. There will be no changes to parking provision and no trees will be impacted by this proposal. No letters of objection have been received. I suggested no objection.
Yeah, it looked okay to me. Are we all happy to go with that recommendation? Thank you.
Yeah.
1954 does not meet the criteria required for the consideration by the committee. 5/20/21/957 is variation of condition 2. I just wanted to check, I'm not sure if I'm reading this right or not. Are we saying that the variation of condition was to increase the size of one of the bedrooms and the food room was to increase the size of a couple of rooms?
To increase the size of bedroom 5. Yes, to increase the size of bedroom 5. I think,
was it a meaningful increase?
I didn't look at it. I didn't look at it because we don't normally deal with the variation of conditions.
No, I was going to see if we wanted to comment whether it should be a variation, but okay, that's fine. We'll leave it to district to decide. Just occasionally you get somebody sticking in a variation of condition,
Yeah,
and it's a major change.
If they look like quite big, if they look like they're going to really alter an application, then I'll have a look through and see exactly what they are. But this one didn't look too involved.
That's fine.
It's a general sort of rule of thumb. If there's going to be a substantial increase, then they have to resubmit. If it's a variation of conditions, it just generally means that there's a slight amendment to the internal walls of the approved plan.
I know, but it's not unknown. I have looked at. I have been there when somebody's whacked in a change of condition, and you look at it, and it's nothing of the kind. It's a material change. 5/20/20 1958 at Brambledene.
Right. Again, I haven't submitted any pictures for this one. There were no letters of objection. This property is set in the Harpenden Conservation Area and is sited on a pretty open-fronted area of the commons, surrounded by various designed type dwellings. The conservatory, which is attached to the side and front of the property and offers no privacy to the occupiers of the property due to its positioning and open aspect of the garden and area. There's also a small single-storey side and rear extension, including a garage with a flat polycarbonate type roof. The proposal is to replace and update the existing extensions, but within the confines of the conservation area. So this one basically, although they're going to replace it, they will be doing it under the guidance of the conservation area officers. So I didn't have too much of a problem with it. It's going to be on the same footprint, and they're just basically just taking down the old dated one and putting up a new conservatory and sort of living accommodation.
Yeah, it looked okay to me.
Yeah.
Any comments, or are we all happy to go with that? Yeah. Thank you. Right, 1979 doesn't meet criteria. We've looked at Southdown. Right, 1932 doesn't meet the criteria for consideration, and neither does 1962. So we go on to 5/20/20 29 Morton End Lane.
This one again, no pictures, no letters of objection for this one. This application is for a first floor rear extension, which shows a small extension to the existing bedrooms and the addition of a shower room. The first floor is pulled in from the boundary and there is sufficient screening from trees. There doesn't appear to be any detrimental impact on neighbouring properties with regard to the partial garage conversion. Property has a double garage, so therefore it won't be any problem, and also appears to have ample on-site parking. No trees have been affected by this application, so therefore I considered no objection.
Yeah, I mean, it looked fine to me. Did anybody have any comments? No, we're all happy to go with that recommendation. No objection. Thank you. 5/20/21 787 doesn't meet the criteria for consideration. 5/20/20 18/22 is at 53 Granby Avenue.
Right. This one, again, no letters of objection, but as you can see, the plans are a little bit deceiving because it looks like it's got, on the plans, it looks like it's got a big frontage, but as you can see from this picture, it doesn't necessarily have a big frontage. It's sited in a road which consists of properties of modest brick-built detached and semi-detached dwellings. The proposals for this property show the extensions to wrap around the original building with an increase in roof height from 6.8 metres to 8.5 metres. There is shown to be a Juliet balcony in the proposed loft conversion, which may impact on neighbouring properties in terms of overlooking and loss of amenity. Parking is proposed for 3 cars on the drive following the installation of a new dropped curb, compacted gravel finish and a small wharf wall in the middle of the drive of the frontage. However, combined with the ground floor bay window sited in the middle of the property and the shrubbery planted in the front of it, this may make it difficult to manoeuvre onto the driveway. The proposal shows an increase from 4 to 5 bedrooms. I've considered recommending refusal, as the proposal is an overdevelopment of the site in terms of height, scale and design, which may be out of keeping with the street scene and have a detrimental impact on neighbouring properties. I've also expressed concerns with regards to possible insufficient parking provision. So you can see from this particular picture here, where they say that there's parking for 3 vehicles. There's this dwarf wall at the front of the drive, so they've got the new dropped curb on the right of the picture, but they've got this small dwarf wall here which is going to inhibit parking along opposite the bay window with the shrubbery underneath. So I think they're going to have difficulty manoeuvring around anyway. And as we were talking earlier, if it's going to be a 5-bedroom property, again, is 3 vehicle parking going to be sufficient? I also feel that with a wraparound proposal, it's going to impact on neighbouring properties.
I mean, well, I used to live on Granby Avenue when I first lived in Harpenden, and it's a fairly mixed road, and a lot of properties have been extended fairly extensively there. However, I'm particularly concerned about the height, the increase in the height of the roof, which seems very considerable. Nigel?
If you see a plan of the site or a plan of the roof, also you've got a huge flat roof dormer,
Yes.
which again comes back to my earlier point about dominant roof
Yes,
features that are going to sort of overpower the rest of the building, and I think this is another case in point.
Yes, I quite agree. I'd be particularly concerned about the roof form.
Yep.
Yes. Anybody else comment, or are we just happy to go? I mean, I'm happy to go with the refusal on the as recommended. Yes.
Yep. Everyone's in agreement.
Okay.
Thank you.
5/20/21/993. 45 Harrisbrook.
Right, this one again, I've got no pictures on it, as I'd recommended no objection. There were no letters of objection. The proposals outlined in this application for a loft conversion and first floor rear extension appear to have no impact on neighbouring properties or the street scene. The rear extension has been pulled in from the boundary, which lies at an angle from the neighbouring property and is to host an additional bedroom, changing this property from a 3 to a 4-bedroom property. The loft conversion will house a small rear dormer window which sits neatly on the rear roof and offers no detrimental impact. With regards to the change from hip to gable on the roof, although this is a semi-detached property, the adjoining neighbour has already made changes to the roof line, which alters the appearance of the semi-detached dwellings in the street scene, with other semi-detached properties in the street showing changes to roof lines. The street scene itself shows a different array of designs of detached and semi-detached properties. Parking for this proposal shows that there will be provision for 3 cars, which includes the garage. There'll be no trees affected.
Okay. Anybody want to speak, or are we happy to go with the recommendation of no objection? Yep. Okay.
Okay, agreed.
Yes.
Yeah.
And then.
Sorry, I wanted to speak on this one.
I'm sorry, Paul.
It's just that because you've gone to no objection, it was expressed concern on parking provision. That street is a horrendous street to travel along. It's narrow. There's a curve in it, and it is a route that people take to get to other parts of the area, and so it's a real problem for parking. I totally agree about being a very mixed set of properties and all the other things said. I totally agree with. I don't really comment that is, but for them to increase the bedroom size, we need to be saying something about parking, even as we've got expressed concern.
But they're changing their bedrooms from 3 to 4, but they're still got parking for 3 cars, which includes the garage. So they're meeting the parking standards.
All right. Maybe that's why it's so crowded at the moment. Everyone's doing that. But all right, I'll have to accept it then.
Okay. Okay, so moving on to 5/20/22/004 Langdale Avenue.
Okay, this property is showing a proposal for a part single, part 2-storey rear extension, which is a mirror image of its neighbouring property, number 3 Langdale. So this property here, you can see. Oh, where we go?
Sorry, I'm
That's all right.
struggling. He is misbehaving.
Oh,
Don't misbehave. Right.
right. Okay.
Try again. There we go.
That's the property. So this is number 4 Langdale. As you can see, so the proposal is mirroring the neighbouring. There we go.
Oh, you want to do that one?
Yes,
okay, there we go.
please.
Apologies. There we go.
Right. So okay. So a lot of the properties along here seem to have done the same sort of extensions, where they're doing a single-storey rear extension on the inside of the property, and then a 2-storey extension on the outside of the property, which seems to work fine, doesn't have any impact on anybody else, and because they're set at an angle from each other as the road curves round, they don't have any impact. So this doesn't have a problem. This particular property is increasing its bedroom capacity from 2 to 3 bedrooms. However, they have provided no parking at all. Now, all the properties along this road only have sufficient parking for approximately 1 car. They are all little cottages by the looks of it, but this one hasn't even provided parking for 1 car, and that's why I've expressed concern. So I don't know where councillors want to go with this one.
I don't know about anybody else. Yes, because the other, I know Langdale very well, and the others have, as you say, had a drive and a crossover put in.
Yeah.
I must say, I would be inclined, on the basis that no parking provision, I'd be inclined to refuse. I don't know what other councillors feel.
I think I'd agree, Rosemary.
Yes. Yeah. I don't think it's acceptable to me, because you could get a drive for, you could get 1 car. There's no reason not to have space for 1 car put in, and I can't see any reason why not. So are we minded to agree with that? Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
5/20/20/2013 does not meet the criteria for consideration, and then we go on to 5/20/20/2034 27 Holcroft Road.
Okay, I've got pictures for this one here, I believe. Right, now this property
is Langdale.
It's all right when Heather's it's playing up again.
Sit down.
Right, I'll start the ball rolling. This property is set in a row of 4 properties, with its neighbouring property, number 29, being set slightly forward on its building line. The proposed, there you go. Its proposed single-storey front extension is suggested to be positioned on the same side and building line as number 29. The proposed two-storey rear extension is to be positioned on the neighbouring side of number 29 and appears to fail to have been pulled in from the boundary. So that's not a very clear picture, is it, that I've given you there? Sorry.
No, but it's quite a difficult configuration to get your head round if you don't know.
Yes. Right, so here you can see that the two-storey rear extension on the side of number 29 is quite a way back, and my concern was that the 45-degree rule might well affect number 29 and obviously would have a detrimental impact on number 29. The single-storey extension on the side of 25 I thought was absolutely fine. Parking provision has been detailed for 2 vehicles and it appears that no trees will be affected. I suggested recommend refusal with regards to the design and scale of the proposal and the detrimental effect that this proposal would have on neighbouring property number 29 in terms of loss of amenity.
I agree.
Yes.
Yeah.
Are we all happy to go with the recommendation?
Thank you.
5/2020-1819 does not meet the criteria for consideration. We've looked at the next application already. 5/2020-2049, 20 St James's Road. Oh, it doesn't put the criteria for consideration now, does it?
No, not now.
And 5/2021-783, similarly. 5/2020-1983 does not meet criteria for consideration by the committee, and neither does 2045. So then moving on to 5/2021-19, can't read it, 1996 at Station Road, 28 Station Road.
Right, okay. This one, I've got no pictures. I didn't feel it was necessary to give any. This property is a listed building positioned in the Harpenden Conservation Area. It currently operates as a restaurant stroke wine bar under class usage A3 and has 2 residential units above it with 4 parking spaces provided to the rear. The proposal to change to A5 usage was initiated for reasons of sustainability and prior to the government class usage changes which took place on the 1st of September 2020. This means that an automatic change took place with class usage changes from class A3 to class E and class A5 to sui generis, which is takeaways. Therefore, this part of the application will go through automatically. With regards to the installation of the rear flue, this is proposed to have anti-vibration fixings on it and will be sited at the rear of the property, 0.3 metres higher than the rear extension ridge line. This means that it will be 1 metre higher than the residential windows of the rented accommodation. I suggested no objection, provided that there will be no detrimental impact to the residents of the properties and their amenity, and that it was in keeping with the listed building and the conservation area.
Yeah, I think okay. That's the one that's on if you're going up Station Road, up the hill, it's on the left, isn't it, near the Dogs Trust?
Yeah, that's right. I think it was called Must or something.
Or the wine bar.
It used to be Rollins or something. Yes. Okay, well, I'm happy to go with that. Are we all happy with that? Yeah, thank you. 5/20/2000 does not meet criteria for consideration. 5/20/2018 at 29 Claygate Avenue.
Okay, this one, no letters of objection have been received. I don't have any pictures for this one because this proposal follows an application for a non-material amendment to previous application 5/20/20-0570 for the addition of hanging tiles to the first floor elevation. Previous application was for painted render. Street scene shows that many of the properties have hanging tiles on the fronts of their houses, and therefore this application would not be out of keeping with the area. So I suggested no objection.
In fact, I think it's an improvement,
Yeah, I think so.
basically. So are we all happy with that? Thank you. And then 5/20/20-2047 does not require any comment. Gosh, we seem to have had an awful lot of applications tonight, or at least an awful lot that we needed to look at. Okay, moving on to agenda item 7 is appeals. I suppose the main thing to note there, and probably no great surprise, is that there is an appeal been lodged on Redcliffe. 20 Salisbury Avenue, so it will be interesting to see what happens on that.
Okay.
And 105 Luton Road. Agenda item 8, I don't know if councillors have had a chance to read through it, is the sort of bringing together all our comments, a sort of consolidated response to the planning consultation. I have to say, I take the view that one goes through all these consultations and puts one's comments on, and not sure where they'll get us to, but we make our comments. Does anybody want to add anything to them? I mean, I haven't seen anybody else's, but it looks to me like it's a fairly good summary of what we all commented upon. Are we all happy with it?
I have a couple, but I'll send them under separate cover to you and to probably Heather. Is that the right person?
Yes.
Okay. I did read them.
Sorry, Paul, did you want to speak?
Heather, we can't hear you.
Couldn't hear Heather.
Oh.
Can't hear you.
I'm not muted.
Still can't hear you.
No? I don't know. No?
No, can't hear a thing. Well, is that, well, if you just put a thumbs up, that's okay, that Nigel will send you a couple of comments.
I just want to make one quick comment. I mean, we established early on that it was a really, really badly written questionnaire.
Yeah.
We don't know who that
I
person
don't know if you ever
is.
saw my first comment.
But it's even worse to be trying to get us to comment on changes to national planning in a consultation when it's already we are making clearly the government is determined to also change, make a massive reorganisation of local government. Reminds me of when they tried to change the maths A level before they changed the GCSE maths A level. Not one of our finest hours in education. It seems to be one of those there as well. So,
well, I think we've done the best we can. I know they've included my comment on civil servants. Okay, well, if people could just, any supplementary comments, if you could just send them to Heather and Mim. Thank you. Right, agenda item 9, which really is just for noting of applications for tree works.
Okay, noted.
And similarly 10 conservation area tree works for noting, and list of weekly decisions from St Albans for noting, which I have to say I'm so overcome by the time I've read all the papers for Southdown. I haven't actually got around to looking at it yet. Don't know if there's anything particularly to notice, but have a look and note. And then I think it's just date of next meeting, which is the
27th of October.
27th of October.
Yep.
And that brings the meeting to a close. Well, thank you very much, everybody. Been rather a long meeting tonight, but we had a rather meatier session than we sometimes have. So thanks very much, and thanks, Mim and Heather.
Thank you.
Thank you. Are we still recording, or are we?